Welcome to America Open for Business, where we talk with high-growth entrepreneurs and leaders who have found success in one of the world's most important markets.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cameron Heffernan, and I'm the host of America Open for Business, and I'm very excited to kick off today's show. We have in today's session the Founders and Owners series, Richard Walton from South Africa, who I'll introduce to the show in a moment. The episode is brought to you by Your B2B Marketing, a global marketing agency. We work with mid-market companies in the B2B arena around the world as they face challenges entering new markets, expanding across borders. We handle end-to-end marketing, both strategy and execution, so clients can focus on customer growth and expansion. Discover how we can drive your expansion by visiting our site, yourb2bmarketing.co. And past guests of the show have included Brian Smith of the UGG brand, the Australian sheepskin boots and footwear, Ben Tija, who's the founder and CEO of Earthly Wellness, a $20 million plus direct-to-consumer e-commerce brand that's changing healthcare. And today's guest is Richard Walton from Outsale Sales, who is in South Africa and joining us on the show today. Richard, welcome to America Open for Business.
Thanks, Cameron. Thanks very much for having me.
All right. Glad to have you on. So when I start my program, I usually kick it off with one initial question, a big picture question of how do you help people? How do you help companies?
That's a great question. And it's funny, my brother and business partner were talking about this morning, because we don't think we do a very good job about talking about all the different ways that we give value. And my brother was saying, we need to do a better job of communicating all the value that we do. And I said, I don't know if we do, because I quite like surprising people with all the value they get with working with us. So I guess the big, how do we help companies? Well, I mean, sure, we're a boutique growth agency, and we work with B2B firms selling pretty high ticket items. So average kind of annual contract value of $50,000. A lot of our clients are a lot harder. So the way that we help our clients is essentially they're normally selling things that are very hard to market. Traditional inbound tactics don't work. Their sales cycle can be anything up to 2 years, sometimes 3 years. So helping them put all the pieces together is a big part of it. But if I was to say what's the one thing, because I would say it's about having confidence in the process, because when you're selling these types of things, one of the key things to remember is that patience is king. Because if you start to panic and you start to rush and you start to push harder, then you've got a real risk of burning your prospects or your accounts. And that's the last thing you want to do when you're in this kind of space, because normally your account list is very small and you can't afford to do that. So giving our clients in the process is a very big part of what we do.
Oh, wow. So desperation is not an attractive trait for a salesperson or an entity.
I don't think it's an attractive trait for anything or anyone.
Yeah. And those are the kinds of emails that we all get, or LinkedIn outreach. Have you seen my email from 30 minutes ago? I'm ready for you to respond. And it's just that there's no thought to them. It's just a total shotgun approach. Your effort would be to coach people out of those kinds of tactics. What do you do instead?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. How many times can you say, "Did you get my last email?" I mean, you just can't do that. So, the world is changing. I think in the last couple of years, what used to work just doesn't anymore. And I think anyone listening to this conversation has probably received 2 or 3 emails at a minimum today trying to sell them something. And it's the same with LinkedIn and possibly other channels as well. And I don't think, this is perhaps controversial, but I don't even think AI is going to make that better. I think actually it's going to make it worse, because I think the volume is going to pick up. So what we advise our clients to do is how to adopt a multi-channel, multi-touchpoint approach to building real authentic relationships with people, and not trying to sell people stuff that they don't need. It's about working with people, understanding their problems, and putting together really good account monitoring tools, so you know when is the right time to approach people to sell. rather than trying to stuff things down people's throats. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff we could go into about how that actually works, but in short, it's about building real relationships, monitoring accounts, and then arming your sales team with account intelligence reports, or dossiers as we call them, so they can go to the account and to the prospect at the right time, armed with really detailed information so they can have good conversations.
How do you walk that balance of in your content approach or your content strategy of identifying with prospects' needs and emotions versus your solution to those pain points?
So it's an interesting one. I guess perhaps we should also talk about how different prospects are talking about their individual needs toward, as opposed to the company's needs. So when we work with clients, we talk a lot about decision makers versus users. I'm a very big fan of thinking about who uses your product and service initially, not necessarily who's the decision maker, because quite often they're let's face it, who's the hardest person to reach in any organization? It's the decision maker, right? And if you can find a way into an account, probably the easiest way is to think about the users, who could be benefiting from your product or service. So understanding their needs and their pain points is key, and their needs and their pain points is probably going to be quite personal to them. It's probably going to be very different to the CEO. The CEO is probably going to be, or the CFO is going to be much more about how much money is this going to save me, how much more effective is it going to be, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas the user, it's going to be much more about how is this going to make my life easier? How is this going to make me perform better in my role? Can this help me advance my career? So quite often you have, in terms of content, you need very different strategies for different people at each company. So that's one of the first things that I would, that when we work with clients, is to really delve in deep to understanding the difference between users and decision makers, and then understanding their individual pain points, and then building a content strategy around that.
I mean, that's why we make buyer personas, and we look at different levels, and an interesting concept between decision maker versus, the budget holder. They're going to want different things. And it's also different, parts of the sales cycle. Top of the funnel, it's about awareness. That often could be the end user, an influencer, but maybe not the budget holder.
Yeah, no, 100%. A story I like to tell is about 6 years ago, I was running a sales team, and my sales manager came to me and she said, "Hey, Richard, I think we should move to HubSpot." We're on Salesforce at the time. And I said, "Okay, why is that?" And she said, "Because of this, 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 and this." And I said, "Well, how much did it cost?" She said, "Well, it's going to be this." And I said, "What are you concerned about?" She said, "Well, this and this." And I said, "Well, what are the things that are going to help you leave your concern?" She said, "This and this." And I said, "Okay, sounds good. Let's do it." The conversation took 16 minutes. HubSpot hadn't even bothered to reach out to me. They'd reached out. She wasn't involved in the decision-making process, but they'd reached out to my sales manager, who, of course, as a salesperson, was the first person to pick up the phone. So, I'm always a big fan of, if you want to get access into an account to understand what's going on in a business, talk to their salespeople. They'll always pick up the phone or answer your email.
Yeah, it can be an effective way in.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. You need different content at different stages of the funnel. I know some companies, you and I were talking about before this went on air, we were talking about how you knew a client in Mexico that had 12 customers.
Yeah.
And I've got some clients that for them, success is signing one customer a year. And it gets so detailed, they actually produce a content at an account level for one particular business. And that can be really interesting as well, because I think what we're talking about is creating content at the right time to the right people that's going to be very engaging for them. And the more granular you can get, the more effective your content strategy will be.
Yep, that granularity, that's where you speak to what they're listening for. You're talking the same language. To take the example of events, I'll often work with, and that client in particular, we deliberately seek out events where it's not 300 exhibitors, it's maybe 30 tables, and they have a chance of getting up on the dais, and they have a chance of getting a nice package together at the show. They have a chance of partnering with the publication that is at the show for content. And that client of ours in particular, they've built this relationship over years with a publication that covers a very niche area of manufacturing, wire harness assembly. And they've built over a 5-year period a really good webinar. They have a partner webinar every year before the biggest trade show in the industry. We started it during COVID because there wasn't going to be an event that year. There was no event for 2 years. So, well, let's do our own thing. And we've gotten great traction. It's now branded. They do it every year. And when I work with my clients, I try to look at where are those opportunities where you're different, unique. Some people think, well, if you only need one client a year, that must be easy, right? You only need one client a year. That's got to be the easiest job in the world. It's not the case.
No, I mean, I think as we all know, and the reason they only need one client a year is because the customer lifetime value is in the millions of dollars. But when someone is spending millions of dollars, it's not easy. There's a lot of things that need to come into play, and there's probably the decision-making process probably involves 5 or 6 people. And having trust in the company that they're talking to, trust in the person that they're talking to, is really important. And building those relationships takes time. We all know that building relationships takes time. So no, it's not easy, and you get one thing wrong, at any time in that funnel, and you can risk destroying all the hard work that you've done. So no, it's
yeah. Let's go through a typical client engagement of yours. How does someone get to you? What is the pain point they're approaching you with? And walk us through your process when you work with someone new.
Yeah. So quite weirdly, for a growth agency, we don't do marketing.
Okay.
So we're very small. So we like to work with only 15 to 20 clients at a time. And the reason for that is our growth consultants, who are the account leads, are all ex-entrepreneurs. And the reason for that is I believe I know a lot of growth consultants and lead gen agencies, companies like that, where you sign up with them, there's someone quite impressive on the call, does the sales call, and then you're handed off to a junior account manager. I think you and I are entrepreneurs. We're both members of the Entrepreneurs organization. And I think we all know that, business departments don't operate in silo. So if you're going to be successful in outbound sales, you need to have a deep understanding of all the different things that come into play. And I'll talk a little bit in a minute about our process, but alignment is a very big part of that. So having that entrepreneurial mindset, I think is really, really important. That's why we've decided to keep our agency small, so we can bring in highly experienced entrepreneurs who can help other businesses grow. Most of my clients come through the Entrepreneurs organization, the EO network, which I'm a very big fan of. So there's lots of word of mouth. And I guess another thing that I do is I am on the public speaking. I do a lot of public speaking.
Yeah.
I like doing it, and we get a lot of potential clients through that as well. I'm actually off to Bahrain on Monday. So that's how people come into us. In terms of client engagement, we operate on a retainer model. So there's a 3-month minimum commitment, and to date, we've never lost a client. So I think that must be, we're very proud of that. But we're also very picky. So here's the discussion. So we're also very picky about who we're going to work with. So we probably say no 30% of the time, 40% of the time. And that's not from snobbery. It's from the way that we work isn't going to work for everybody.
Yeah.
So, and because we don't do any marketing and it's all word of mouth, we want to make sure that we can be successful. So that's a very big part of what we do.
Yeah. Well, I was stunned. I mean, not the right word, but I saw on your website, we only work with 15 clients at a time. And it's right there. It's very obvious. And that's an amazing thing to have the courage to be able to say too, that, we do turn people down because it's not the right fit.
I should give you a bit of a backstory to that.
Okay. All right.
So there's another reason. So I'm nearly 50 and I've built a number of businesses over the last 30 years. And I've got to admit, I'm getting a little bit tired. And my previous business was a digital marketing agency that focused on SMEs in the UK, and that we were supplying with marketing services from South Africa. We were a team of 25 before COVID. COVID hit, and we grew to 160 people in 18 months. And it nearly killed me. And I just don't want to go there again. I want to work with a small number of clients that we can know that we're going to be successful with. I want to keep the team small. So we're a team of about 13 people here. Actually, no, sorry, we're a team of 16 people. So we're a small team, and you know, it's hard to scale a business. You know, there's as we know, you know, that for me is the most fun part of a business. When you start going beyond that, there's a layer of management that you have to put in. There's a whole bunch of other things. So yeah, we do it because I think we can provide huge value to our clients. Could we do that if we were larger? Yeah, I think we probably could. I think we could probably grow to 30, 40, 50, but I just don't think it's something that I have the appetite for in the moment. But if you go onto my website in a year and you see that it says 30 or 50 clients, then
you've gotten over it.
Hey, Richard, what happened?
So I'm going to throw a quote at you. I want to hear what you think about this. Owner-led sales is the road to despair. Agree or disagree?
I disagree.
Okay.
Because I think, and I know this for a fact, because all of our clients are doing owner-led sales.
Yeah.
But they're not doing the bit that they should be doing.
Okay.
So we can make it so the owners can enjoy the sales process. And so I give this talk. It's called the 50 Nuggets of Sales. And one of my slides is, why can't my sales team sell like I do?
Yeah.
And I'm always talking to founders in this talk. And I say to them, I say, you're probably all thinking about this, aren't you? And they're saying, yeah. And you know, people will say, but I don't even like sales. I'm not even good at it. And I can still outperform my sales team.
Yeah.
And so yeah, a lot of companies come to us. They're founder-led. I like working with founder-led companies, and they say, I want to remove myself from the sales process. And they want to do it quickly. And I say, well, hang on a minute. Before we go down that route, let's look at your sales process. Let's look at all the things we're doing. And I turn around and say, if we were to set it up so you were just having 1 or 2 really high value conversations a month, what would that look like? Would you be happy with that? Oh yeah, I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, and as I said, you know, this is very specific to what we do. And we work, as I said earlier, with companies with hard to market products or services, generally selling high ticket items. We're not talking about doing 5, 6 calls a day. We're actually talking about maybe having 3 or 4 really high quality conversations a month, because a lot of our clients, you know, some only need to sign 1 client a year. You know, more average is probably 6 to 10 a year. But you're not dealing with a high volume of leads. And if you run your sales process properly, and you have a really good outbound sales strategy, as you and I were talking about on the phone, I think we were saying 60% or something of prospects have already decided if they're going to work with you before they approach you. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
So if you do your job well, by the time someone reaches out, all the hard work's been done. I think where it becomes an issue is when you're adopting other tactics where you're bombarding people with emails and LinkedIn messages, and you're just picking up rubbish. And then you're having some phone calls that are just disheartening. That's what wears founders and owners down. So I would say, let's make it fun but for the founder to do the sales process, and then we can talk about removing you from the sales process. But yeah, that's my kind of default answer to that question. It is something that comes up regularly.
Why do you think so many owners can say that? You know, like my team can't do it as well as me. Why is that? The sales part, I mean.
So I'm at heart, I'm a salesperson. I'm a salesman, and for me, sales is all about attitude and energy. It's about confidence, but attitude and energy are the big ones. They did a Harvard Business Study review, when was it, a few years ago, and they did a study that said that salespeople who stood up, their conversion rate went up 3.1%. Standing up. So, you know, energy is really important, and no one has got energy than the founder. And it comes
Okay, yeah.
across, you
Mhm.
know, as human beings, it's one of those things that's very hard to track, but your body language, the tone of voice, how
Mhm.
fast or slow you speak, those are things that can make the difference in a sale.
Mhm.
And that's why, because as founders, we believe in our product or our service more than anybody.
Mhm.
Anybody. So as a side note, if you want to get your sales team to sell like you do, God damn it, they've got to believe in your product and service like you do. So your job is to sell to your team
Yeah.
first and foremost. You have to believe in it. And also, if we're talking about founder-led sales, generally you're talking about smaller businesses,
Yeah.
and it matters. You're the last person to get paid, right? So you
Yeah.
approach every sale with the energy and passion that it deserves.
Mhm.
Whereas, sometimes employees don't do it as hard as you do. I mean,
Mhm.
we could go off on a tangent and talk about commission structures and other ways to manage the energy of salespeople, and it is solvable. I'm not saying founders have to keep doing sales. I'm just saying, before we fix that problem, let's sort out everything else. And then we can start talking about how to remove you from the sales process. But
Mhm.
there's a whole different bunch of things that need to be done to make sure that your sales team can sell as well as or better than you.
Mhm. At core, do you consider what you offer a training process, a program? Do you consider yourselves those who lead by example? How would you describe yourself to someone new that you may be working with?
So we're a consultancy, but we also do a lot of the execution as well. Um, um, so we do offer training programs to sales teams if it's required, but that's a kind of like an add-on service. That's one of
Mhm.
those value adds that we do. It's not on our website. We don't advertise it. I don't talk about it in the sales process. But if we feel that our clients are struggling
Mhm.
to convert the leads we're sending them, absolutely, we'll jump in and we'll run training programs around that. No, so kind of what we do is we've got a team of what we call prospect relationship managers. So
Mhm.
kind of our team is, as I talked about, is the growth director, which is seasoned entrepreneurs. We've got prospect relationship managers, which are, the kind of traditional term is SDRs, sales
Okay.
development reps. We
Yeah.
don't call it that. We call it prospect relationship managers because we're
Hmm.
big about building relationships. And their job is to monitor and analyze accounts and prospects for opportunities to sell and opportunities to engage with in an authentic way, looking to help. Beneath that, we have a data team, a couple of data people who are building lists of potential prospects and breaking them down into kind of micro campaigns. And then we have our tech stack. So we've got a whole bunch of tools that we use mainly for monitoring accounts for a whole bunch of reasons. So
Mhm.
that's what we do. So we are a big part of our clients' team. We meet with our clients normally once a week. We engage with their marketing team. We provide a lot of feedback and advice on positioning. We can provide. We work with their marketing team, their content team, to make sure that all things are aligned. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of how we work.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because often when we work with clients, they'll come in with a specific deliverable or need. Often it's we want more conversions, or we need to grow sales. But when we go and look to work with them, the positioning is not clear. The messaging is not clear. Their value proposition. You're smiling, I see already. And so is that something you face too?
Every time.
Okay. All right.
Every single time.
All right.
So, who's your ICP? Everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it all starts with really understanding who you want to target. So one of the things I always say to clients we start working with them is, I want you to get your account list down to 200 people.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, 200 businesses. And the way to do that is, the way that I would encourage you to think about that is, what 200 accounts and the prospects within them do you think you've got a good chance of bumping into in person in the next 12 months?
Okay.
In person, underlined, is the key thing. Once we've got that down, then we can start having a think about who your ICP actually is. And once you understand your ICP, then you can start understanding what their pain points are. And then you can start thinking about positioning.
Yeah.
But I have this test that I call the grandmother test.
Okay.
But, you know, some people have, you know, oh, we've got our positioning. And then you look at it and you're like, but no one else understands what you're talking about.
Right.
Your position should be so clear that if your grandmother says, what do? You should be like, I do this, and your grandmother should understand it. And I think sometimes we, as entrepreneurs, we get so excited about our offerings that it almost feels like we're being unfaithful to our vision if we, and I don't want to use the word dumb it down, but it's the one that comes to mind, to make it so simple we feel that we're not doing our business justice.
Yeah.
But we have to keep it simple. You know, what it is that you do, and we have to focus on, we have to sell solutions, not features. And you know, we spend a lot of time working with our clients on that, because it's very hard for us to do our job if that's not very clear.
I think a lot of people in marketing, or maybe they're business people or owners that think they know marketing, confuse or conflate benefits with features. They're not the same, particularly in the tech world. Warner and I have talked about this a lot. When the tech world, it's here, speeds and feeds. Here's what we do. We have the fastest widget. We've got this great solution, all these features. Okay, well, but how's that going to help me as a business? How's that going to help me be more effective? How can it help me close more deals? Do you experience that too?
Yeah, I mean, all the time. And it's actually a really tough part of what we do. And it can take quite a lot of time. And I'm still not 100% clear why it's so hard. You know, I said earlier, I think perhaps it's almost feeling you're not doing your, you know, you've got a lot of pride in what you've just built. You want to tell everyone all the things that you can do.
Yeah.
But your customers, they don't care. As you just said, how is it going to help me? And we talk about users and decision makers. And again, those two things can be quite different. You know, user, how is it going to help me? How is it going to make my life easier? Decision maker, how is it going to make me more money? Or how is it going to save me money? Or how is it going to do a whole bunch of other things? And that's what you've got to really speak to. And if you don't have that, and if it's not clear, then maybe you haven't got the right product or service for this particular market, because that match has to be there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, what is your ICP's pain points, and what's the solution that you've got to fix that? If that isn't clear, then you've got the wrong ICP, or your product or service needs tweaking. Yeah,
or that it's not up to date, or it's from an industry that's not directly related to the one that you're going after now. Things change over time. And I'm a big fan of saying to clients, we need to update those regularly. We need to look at, particularly if you enter a new market. One of my clients they've added outreach to medical device manufacturers, very different audience from industrial manufacturing, from automotive, for instance, different value proposition, different buyers. It's not all about just low-cost labor for the medical device world. So we had to shift and really adjust. What's our real value proposition? What are we offering to this particular set of buyers?
Yeah, no, it's so important. And I think perhaps and I'm talking a lot about my experience working with founder-led businesses. And I think perhaps maybe the issue is that for a lot of founder-led businesses, you start your business, and I'm sure you and I have both been in this position before. You're desperate for revenue, so you'll take revenue from anyone and everything. And then what happens is you've got basically a whole bunch of different types of clients who probably require lots of different types of things. And then what happens is around year 5, you sit around and think, oh, I've got a pretty successful business here. How do I go to the next step? Well, the next step is about making it very clear what you do. And so well, what I'm saying is you can hustle to that stage, right? And then, you need to sit down and you need to start thinking about building a proper brand strategy and be clear about your positioning. But it's hard, because when you look at your existing customers, they're from all over the place, and they all have they're using your product or your service in different ways. And the reason, therefore, it's a challenge, I think, to just kind of narrow that down, tighten it down, is you're probably saying no to a lot of your existing customers. And that's quite scary to think, well, actually, what we're now doing is potentially, we could potentially risk alienating a very big part of our business. Right. But I think that's the only way to grow to the next step. So So I think that's probably why it's so hard, is just maybe what the normal growth trajectory is for startups, actually.
Like having the courage to say no, to say, you know, this is not where we want to be longer term. This is not where we see the growth of where we're going. I mean, that's why we're pivoting from a commoditized, that's in my opinion, marketing services are becoming more and more commoditized. You can do a lot of it now with AI tools, offshore competitors that can undercut you for cost. I'm leaning into, let's work with overseas headquartered businesses that want to grow in the US market. That's something special. That's something a little bit more unique. And,
Yes.
you know, I feel we can add more value there.
Well, our tagline on our website is growth favors the brave. I think that's, speaks to what we've been talking about, because it is scary. But it's absolutely critical if you want to break through that bottom line. I would even argue that, it's why, if you're looking at kind of traditional venture-backed businesses, why so much money is thrown at them is so they can remain very, very focused on a particular customer and a particular product or service. Because if you're not venture-backed, you're bootstrapping, then you take it from everywhere, which fragments your, as we just talked about, and then actually it's a lot harder. It's a bit like, is it easier to build a new home or to renovate an old one? And that's the kind of similar analogy that we're talking about. You're getting to that year 5 and you have to do a whole bunch of renovations. It's a lot harder than if you just started out with just one clear aim at the beginning.
I mean, it's hard to get a business, 5 years in and say we're going to tear down and just keep this one area of it, this one segment. We're going to focus on that, because you don't want to say no to things. You don't want to. I'm turning revenue down, right? But I feel that that's where growth is going to come from, because otherwise you're not a specialist in anything. What would your case studies look like? They would be all over the place. There's no common industry. There's no common approach. There's no common type of, in our case, content that you'd be making.
Yeah. And, how can you produce really authentic content? And, you can produce it and then people read it and go, oh, this is just for me. And then you come to your website, look at your social media, and it's, hold a minute, this is for everybody. I also believe so much, this is why so many startups that have got so much less resources than bigger organizations often beat them, because the bigger an organization, particularly, if they're listed companies, they have to keep growing every year. And so they start adding new products and services, and they're going to move away from that. And then you have startups with far less resources that can come in and they're focused on doing that one thing. People generally like to go towards experts. They like to go to the people who they feel really understand them, who are talking to them. So there's always a big opportunity to remain focused on that, on the niches. It's really important.
I read an interesting quote from Mark Cuban the other day. He said something along the lines of, when you're starting your company, founder, don't look at it from an economic perspective, but from a learning perspective. Deliberately take on everything. Do those things yourself. Don't outsource them. Learn how to do video editing on your own. Learn how to write a business plan. Learn how the production process works, because that's school fees that would cost you a fortune ordinarily. And a lot of business coaches would probably go against that, saying, well, don't do what you do best and outsource these other things. His point was, you want to go out and learn all you can about these different aspects of the business as you grow. And by the way, it also saves you money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was listening to a podcast by Paul Graham the other day from Y Combinator, and he wrote an article years ago, which I just absolutely love, which is, I think the title of it is Do Things That Don't Scale. And the famous story there is the Airbnb one, where he persuaded the founders to go out and actually visit the homes of hosts. And a lot of what they learned from that experience actually made Airbnb what it is today. And I think, what's been interesting, what I've been reading a lot about over the last 3 years, is how big companies, and the ones in particular are Uber, Airbnb, and ChatGPT, the founders of those companies. So I think the CEO of Uber was an Uber driver for 3 months. Brian Chesky at Airbnb stayed in Airbnb houses for a year.
Yeah.
Sam, when I was listening to a podcast a few months ago, is spending the next year traveling to meet users. And it's all about learning from your customers and being so customer centric that you can, and the point of that is so you can better understand their pain points. So you can
You
create
totally.
yours. That's what
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Yeah. I like to make the analogy with my team is marketing and sales both. We're the waiters at the restaurant. We need to be out there talking with customers, hearing about the food, the dishes, what's good, what's working. The chef back in that's production R&D, they don't get that interaction. So you need each other. Sales and marketing needs to give feedback to the the production team, the R&D team, to make sure that this is what people like. It's not salty or not spicy enough. That team collaboration is essential.
It's funny. You're making me think of an article I wrote a few weeks ago on LinkedIn called "Be the Customer," and I was sitting down and I was thinking about the businesses that I've started over the last 25 years and which ones worked and which ones didn't. And straight away, I saw what the common theme was, and the common theme with the successes was in every single instance, I had actually been the customer, meaning that I had gone with gone with a competitor, thought, oh, that was good, but I could do it better, or I could have done this or that.
Yeah.
Whereas opposed to the other businesses that I started, I had, I never was the competitor, or probably couldn't be the competitor. It was just completely out of my range.
Yeah.
And I think there was just so much value to be had about really, really deeply understanding what the pain points are of your customers. And that's certainly, yeah, as I said, I think there's huge value to be had in adopting that that customer mindset. The closer you can be to a customer, the better.
Yeah.
And we were talking about founder-led sales. So one of the things that always worries me about founders removing them from sales is there is no better way, in my opinion, to understand what your customers need and want than to be on the phone to them.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I always encourage, anytime I run workshops or do talks, I always encourage my audience to say, just as a founder, if you're not involved in the sales, it's fine, but just take one sales call a week.
Yeah.
Because not only will it really motivate your sales team, but you'll learn so much. And I would also encourage you to spend a day, a month on customer service as well, because
how much you'll learn. Yeah.
Yeah.
The pain points, how much you learn. They don't have to be in HubSpot under the hood or Salesforce building lists, but that it's the customer interaction that is essential, to be learning about the needs. I had one of those last week, and I'll share it with you briefly. I was with the kids. We went to Wendy's, which I'm not a big fast food person. Went to get some food after my kids' track meet, and they're test piloting here. Wendy's is headquartered in Central Ohio. It's a franchise model, but because it's here, they pilot stuff here locally. It was the ordering board was there, but it was all AI driven, right? So you make your order, and we also had the app. So we had both the app on the phone as well as the Wendy's AI board to make your order. And I said, I'd like to place my order with the app. And they said, just a moment, we're going to call a service person to come and help you, defeating the whole purpose of the AI. The app I had downloaded, I'm an early adopter. They try to incentivize me to be on the app. The person comes on, and I don't feel bad for it's not the fault of the person who's working there, entry level, probably a high school student. They said, oh, if you want to order by the app? And I said, yeah. And she said, oh, you have to pull around. You're holding up the line, pull around and go make your order over there and then come back. So a couple of things struck me. First of all, the friction involved in that. Aren't you trying to get me onto your app to order more food and be more loyal? And that's how you reward that loyalty. And then they hadn't thought through. No one had tested this out. Is this going to all work together? And this is a multi-billion-dollar, global brand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've made this mistake before. I built a company, and I've been very excited to build layers that ultimately removes me further and further away from customers. You start out, you're on the floor at a trade show, you're talking to customers, you're doing the sales calls, you're doing the customer service. But I can't wait to build all these things so I don't have to do all that stuff. So I can sit in the big office and just think about strategy and come up with amazing ideas and, inspire the team. But you lose touch very quickly. It's very dangerous, I think.
Well, Richard, I'm going to ask you one last question, but first I'm going to reintroduce you to our listeners. And thank you so much for coming on the show. Richard is available or findable, I should say, at Outsale Sales, outsalesales.com. teaching B2B big ticket companies how to succeed with outbound sales development. And you can check out, they have a lot of good resources and information about the pool of companies that they work with on their site. Richard, my question to you is, in a decade, when you're inducted into the Business Development Consulting Hall of Fame, what are you going to lead with at your speech? What's the most important thing you'd leave people with to talk about how to succeed in this arena?
I don't know why, but I have an image in my mind.
Okay.
And it's of it's a bit of a cheesy image. It's a guy in a leather jacket holding a massive Nokia phone like this, and he's got 2 martinis in a coffee cup holder. This is a picture that I saw from the 80s, and I don't think that picture will ever go out of fashion. So I think I'll probably have a t-shirt made with this picture on the front that says something like, "Don't forget the personal touch." Because however great AI becomes, and all the other tools that become, I can't see, when you're doing what we do, which is big ticket items, I don't think that we'll ever get to a point that the personal touch won't matter. In fact, I would think that that's going to become more and more important. And I think in the last 10 years, we've moved away from that. We got very excited by tech, and we used to spend a lot of time going on the floor, going to meet people. And then tech made us pull back from that. COVID made us pull back from that even more. And I'm just a very big fan of encouraging people to just get in front of prospects, use that human touch, be real. We live in a virtual world. So I think our biggest competitive advantage now is being able to meet in person. And let's remember that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Richard, thank you so much for joining on the show. Richard of Outsale Sales, thank you for joining us on America Open for Business.
Cool.
Take care.
Thanks very much. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the America Open for Business podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.